Hi, and welcome everybody to another special Women in Safety. Amandeep, who do we have with us today?
Hey everyone, good morning. My name is Amandeep Beesla with Salus. So today we have Janice Stanley. Her 11 years of experience in health and safety and diverse background in other industries like film and healthcare make Janice Stanley a force to be reckoned with in the world of safety. As a self-taught individual, her passion for the safety and well-being of those around her has led her to create a successful career as a woman in safety. Her confidence and strong will are just some of the things that make Janice a valuable leader in a male-dominated space of safety. And just on a personal note, Janice and I, we've been friends for God knows how long, so it's not even work. And we've been to plenty and many breakfasts and brunches and just catching up and just really oh my God, I have so much love for you. So thank you so much for coming out. I totally appreciate it. And this is going to be awesome.
Awesome. Hi there. How's everybody today?
Great. Thank you, Janice, so much for joining us. I'm really excited about the episode that we're having today. And I wanted to kick it off by learning more about what was your first experience when you were coming into the workforce and then going into safety, because I understand you started in the workforce in the late 90s and then you joined us in safety a little bit after. So can you share that journey with us?
Sure, absolutely. 18 years old, I wanted a real job. So my sister was a journeyman for John Deere, and a client of theirs was asking for women to come learn to drive heavy equipment. And I wasn't working at the time, and my sister nominated my name, and the guy called me, and it was so different and it's so exciting. I jumped on it. And back then, and that would be like late 76, 77, there was no safety on the job. You were lucky to even have to wear a hard hat or a vest. You did have to have steel-toed boots, I remember that. But at the time, can you imagine being a dozer operator and guiding guys who were scraping earth, who've been doing it forever, and all of a sudden you're the new dog on the block and you're supposed to be telling and guiding them where to go? Well, I'll tell you, I never played more smash them up and bang with equipment than anything, because these guys didn't want me to lead them. They wanted to put their digger down where they were going to put it, and I had to come catch up to them and push them, right? So definitely no women were appreciated on the job, but we pushed through. After that, I kind of went into, I did that for a few years, and then I went into sales, because I thought maybe mobile equipment wasn't really for me. It was really quite a brutal introduction to construction. And I went into sales for several years, and I became more of a safety professional through mentors like Tony Robbins, and really explored that opportunity to sales and market. And I went into things that I loved, and I loved nutrition and I loved health at the time. I was quite a fitness buff at the time. So and then in the meantime, I was getting married. So I ended up moving to the States and got married to a fella and ran this, our nutrition clinics and fitness camps. After 15 years, I really did miss family. I came back to Canada, and that would be about 2005. And at that time, I decided to go into, I'm not going to give away my age, but it was, I was in my 40s, and I decided to go on to a whole new career, and that was into healthcare. It sort of segued from the nutrition part because it's all about health. But at the time, I wanted a job that was going to be a needed profession. So I was upgrading to get my nursing, and I got my healthcare aid status at the same time, and ended up working in dementia healthcare.
Wow.
Which I really loved. I worked at maybe 4 or 5 different hospitals, so I got to see different perspectives, different hospitals. I worked on Salt Springs, so a very remote kind of an area. But again, shaping who you are. And, it's good to, for me, it's good to change careers because it really changed who I was all along. But underlying, it was mostly because I was chasing the money. I wanted to make more money.
Absolutely. And I remember back then that healthcare was a really up and coming, so up and coming.
Yeah, and it still is. We need them, but it's also a platform where you can experience heavy burnout or
Yeah.
nervous breakdowns.
Yeah.
And I did experience it. Even though my heart is still with, dementia patients, and I would turn around tomorrow and help somebody, you just can't do that in a day-to-day job.
No.
So one of my coworkers, I said to her, I really need to think of another career. And it was unfortunate because I'd only been doing it for 5 years and felt like, wow, I'm going to walk away from something I just spent a ton of money getting trained in. But I had to. And she said, well, look at the occupational first aid trainer course. And I went, oh, okay. So that was sort of my first introduction to, wow, safety and medics. I really hadn't ever heard of it before. So I did take my OFA 3 and I failed,
Mhm.
which is kind of funny, but it's not, because at that time, I was also, not only had I lost a career, but I was also in a 5-year relationship that was breaking up. So
Oh,
my
wow.
brain was not into training and studying, but I put for, strong leader, I'll push through,
Yeah.
And I
Mental
took it-
health is so important. What do you
Oh
think?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Dude,
Janice, when you
thank-
were going through that, like when you were, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, when you were going through your schooling and like as you were transitioning into it, did you see very many women, or did you see other women kind of chasing, or not chasing, but pursuing this at the same time? Or do you feel like it was, you could already kind of see the writing on the wall and it was predominantly male, like right from the hop?
Yeah, both classes I took, there was 2 or 3 women in each class.
Okay.
And it was, 18 people in the class, 15 people in the class.
Yeah.
And when you're in your training, you speak to other people that are heading maybe into safety or have been, or they're recertifying, and you hear their stories.
Yeah.
And yeah, oil and gas was the place to be. That's what everybody was pushing for. That.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You and I, we've spoke about this before, but share many of experiences.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to being in the oil patch and being the only female on the crew.
Yeah. So Tamara, after that, when I failed the OFA 3 twice, I thought, boy, oh boy, what am I going to do? But I had to get out of BC. I wanted to go back to Alberta. And that's when I fell back on my heavy equipment operating.
Ah.
And they took me back after 30 years out of the field. That's how desperate they were for mobile equipment operators.
How was that? Like, how was it for you personally? Like,
Scary.
because I've struggled with ageism before too, but yeah.
Yeah, I worked for Mackay Group, the company.
Yeah.
And they requested a girl at every mine.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any women at the Jack Pine mine. So I went to the Jack Pine mine and started training on the heavy haulers, the 400 ton.
Nice. On Shell, right? Jack Pine and MRF. Yeah. I remember those days.
So I was wondering, Janice, when you were doing the mining work, because that's a very high risk environment, did your health and safety come in there?
That was when I realized there was a different mode of safety. The first time I went to the orientation with Shell, this big booming dude comes in with a voice that the world could hear. He didn't need a microphone. He scared me to death at what he said. And my inner self knew that's what I want to do. Because
the safety guy who was booming at you?
Yeah, he 300 people in the room, in the orientation room. I wanted to do that job. And I thought, wow, when I was doing the 200 hours in the seat and as a passenger, learning how to drive heavy haulers, the instructor was the worst. I nearly died 3 times because of he fell asleep. He drove too close to a cliff. I can go on, but it was then that I went, okay, I don't think I want to do this. I wanted that guy's position. And that's
what was his name?
I can't reveal that.
Oh, okay. His first name's good. It sounds like he was a mentor.
Which guy?
The
safety at Shell?
No, the safety manager that when you first met
Mike.
that's who I wanted to, Mike. Yeah, put a name
With
on
the
Mike
booming
because
voice.
he's our hero, right? So
Yeah.
great for Mike for turning you on to safety. Now, how did Mike help? Did he help you get into safety? Was he your mentor? What did that relationship look like?
Okay, let's go back. Remember, in construction since 18, never had a formal orientation in my life.
Right.
Wow.
So now I'm in an orientation. How you doing, Malcolm? I never had an orientation before. And for me, that was really important to like, holy wow, somebody actually cares about me.
Yeah.
Somebody actually cares about my safety in this journey, right? And so I guess that influence was because coming from a healthcare background and keeping people safe,
Yeah.
it was just a segue for me. It was just a different mode, right?
Do you think women almost have an easier time with health and safety and being in the field opposed to men? Because like we do have that empathy, that emotion, we have that inner intuition almost, if you want to call it that.
You know what? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I believe that men bring a certain perspective that we really need.
Yeah.
And women bring a perspective. I really believe women and men together in that workplace is a really awesome balance.
Yeah.
Because men, I think, Malcolm maybe has something to say about that, and Amber, but I just feel that if we don't have the two, like for instance, Mike, if Mike hadn't spoke up and used his booming voice versus let's say a Tina who had a tiny voice, I probably would have been disinterested.
Yeah.
Right? So his influence, his confidence, and being a natural leader and a confident person, I was drawn to him.
You are very confident. You are so strong. You're one of the strongest women I know, actually. That's awesome. Now, when you were with Fort McKay at the, because I work for the Fort McKay group of companies, so shout out to Fort McKay. That was, I think it was like one of my first jobs as safety. When you were up there, did you feel like the whole organization as a collective or as a whole that they were supporting women in trades? Because they've actually recently had, I saw a post on LinkedIn where they were promoting women, and specifically because of the Indigenous background, they were having Indigenous women being trained up. But do you remember when you were with the organization? And because going back to a point that you just had said where you were talking about how they wanted more women in the seats. Do you remember or do you recall?
Yeah, so I told you they had to have one woman per mine.
Yeah.
In the equipment.
Yeah.
And can I be really frank about this? Because this is what happened. I get up there, I get my, I finish all the training and they put me in my own vehicle. Now I'm on my own driving. The first, the foreman they assigned me to was the cousin to the owner of Fort McKay Group.
Okay.
When he first saw me, his eyes bugged out. He was a little annoyed and he actually ignored me right from the get-go, wouldn't address me, he would talk to everybody else in the toolbox. He wouldn't address me. Every other team had a Indigenous, beautiful young girl. This guy gets the old white girl, right? And he made it really clear because they talked about it. And he said, yeah, I get the old bag. Okay.
Yeah.
And he knew he couldn't just say, hey, you're, be disrespectful and tell me I had to leave. They found a way to fire me. And that's another story. But yeah, they found a way to fire me and I couldn't fight it because the owner was the uncle.
But it's still part of the story because that influenced who people are helping, whose people are mentoring, who people are succession planning in health and safety, right? If people are discriminatory that way.
Yeah, they
Now,
discriminate.
I mean, I shared this on another episode where my health and safety manager, when I was going to him for some career direction, thought it was an opportunity to ask me on a date. And when I declined, that was the end of my career. right? And I
Been there.
overheard comments being made about me, about how, well, we're not going to bother with her. And that's not why people come to work. So Janice, that is a challenge. How did you rise up and become the woman that you are today? Because those type of things do help shape and define us as our professional self. So share with us that part of the story.
What you just said, I've been in that situation too. Especially on a night shift. Women have to just hold their place. I mean, if I knew which battle to battle and which battle not to battle. You have to really understand who you're dealing with. I was put in a situation because I worked hard to get my name out there and I took the time to train. What I didn't like was how little they made me feel, right? And at some point, a leader and an independent person like myself goes, you know what? Fuck this. I am not going to be put in this situation where people think they can undermine me and make me feel less than I am. So I then, I just stepped back. I knew I was stepping back from a lot of money and possibly ruining my name. But at that point, that wasn't, like Amandeep said, mental health is more important than the money.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to end, right? I don't know if you heard stories up there, but it's not going to end. Men are going to take advantage if they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not pointing fingers at men. It just, that's all the stories. I've never heard of a woman doing it to a man, right?
You know what? It was hard, like, because I see it in the work camps up there, and I was still very, I want to say, young, naive, impressionable. I got into corrections at a very young age too, and being up in Fort McMurray in those work camps where there's nothing but men, and it's almost like there were allies and mentors, and they're not, I can't paint them all with the same brush, and there were like a handful, I would say, of the bad apples, but for the most part, everyone was good. But yeah, like, you're in camp and you see these people at work. Now you're seeing them in camp later that night, throughout the day. You're always with these guys, and for them to try and take advantage of you or try and ask you on a date or make some advances and moves, and you just boundaries, and you just got to shut it down. Thanks for the compliment, but it's inappropriate, or let's be professional here, right? And yeah, there were times, I mean, like, and I can't even blame the guys, because like there were instances where there were women that were approaching me and trying to ask me out on a date, and I was just like, no, that's enough, like, please, no, right? So just when you think you're good in the women's wing, it's not always the case.
So I guess that opens up the floor to a question that I have, is about allies. What can allies be doing to provide support? Can you give us some ideas, Janice, in your experience? Yeah. When you needed that support, what would you have loved to have gotten from others?
Okay, so I was in camp. So, and what Amandeep just said is true. My allies had to be someone that I felt would stand beside me. And I remember when I was in Fort Mac a year or two earlier, I was a sandwich maker, and there was a team of mobile equipment operators that used to come in, and there was this big bad dude, and he had a loud booming voice. He was Indigenous, and he had some teeth missing, like he just looked bad. But for some reason, him and I connected on when I would make his sandwiches, right? And then when I got into that mine, I ran into him in the camp. So I went to him and I told him what, and we had sort of developed a friendship. And I went to him and I told him what happened. And I said, I need you beside me. Whenever we're together in this camp, I need you beside me. And I need to know I can count on you. That guy was probably the best ally. And we still call each other now. And this is 6-7 years later. It just, he stood beside me. He, whenever I had to go into a situation, he said, I'll go with you. And if I had to go be on another team, he'd say, I'm coming with you. Like he got to know who the team was. The best thing you can do is find the biggest, baddest dude and have him become your friend.
I love that. I love it.
Because everybody's afraid of him too.
Yeah.
It's true story.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's partly what shaped me in my safety too.
Yeah.
You got to find your friends and pick your battles.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Allies are important because they help rise us up, right?
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about present day. So, what have you experienced recently where you thought your gender was a factor, like both positive and negative?
Okay, I gotta be careful here. I work with a culture that doesn't typically have white women leading them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So that has been a bit of a challenge if that's the negative. But
because you and I, we've talked about it extensively.
yeah, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
positive is that because I went in and did my job and maintained a professional, they now respect me. So that is like a huge accomplishment in my life in these last 6 years, is to get a non-English speaking culture that doesn't know the word hazard and don't follow safety to go from their only safety advisor to now 3 people in our company who do safety and turn them around.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Those
it's so
are-
true. Like, I mean, I
That's
can see
present day.
language and the culture as well. Like, there is no word that defines safety. You can talk about the definition or talk the way around it, or, you know, you can talk about how there's hazards or harms and how your life could be put in jeopardy, but there's no actual verbiage around the word safety. And it's hard to explain. And I mean, even with myself growing up, I never learned English until I was 6 years old. And so up until then, and my dad's a trucker, so up until then, he would explain and he would tell me like how to be safe and make sure you always wear your seatbelt, and you know, just like these key little points and messages and whatnot. But I never learned that, like, or the language just wasn't as complex, right? And now, I mean, Janice deals with that at work, right? So a lot of times they're trying to explain and it's hard, like the struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then with these men and the background and the culture come certain biases and prejudice towards women as well. And like, I was lucky enough where I had supportive brothers. I had a supportive dad. He always kept me equal to my brothers. So the experience wasn't as what Janice witnesses is, but props to you, Janice. Yeah. Yeah. Dealing with all the different personalities, everything that they bring in, especially with the cultural background as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what culture or what industry. Please don't hate me when I say this. I don't even know that a piece of paper like a degree matters. I really feel like the field knowledge is what builds the character of the safety person.
Yeah.
You know, I see a lot of faces here. I'm not sure what Malcolm or Natalie or Aaron, any of these have done in their life, but safety, if you know your job, it doesn't matter where you stand, what company, who you're with, remain a professional and just do your job, right? We don't have to be policemen or patrol cops. We just have to do our job.
So if we were to look out, say 5, 10, 15 years from today, Janice, what do you envision the future of safety would be for women in safety? Can you share that?
Mm-hmm. Hold strong to yourself and your beliefs. My beliefs are shaped after professionals, people that made a difference in the world. And if they weren't doing anything wrong, I felt if I emulated them, then I would be doing more right things than wrong things. It's very easy to go to the wrong side, but I didn't want to go to the wrong side. So I think women just need to hold their ground. If they feel like they want to train and learn through schooling, I never disregard that. I think schooling is great. I've gone back many times. And I think get your feet wet, get out there and get your feet wet. You've got to get out there and get your feet wet. Like Amandeep and I went right into it deep in probably one of the harshest environments. And we're still talking today, you know, so you just got to go out there, hold your ground, be open, don't be negative, don't be pessimistic. I think you've got to be open and resilient and transparent and show your voice.
Yeah. I remember when you and we first met, and you were, you had like quite the uphill battle. And I remember it was around the whole men don't respect women in certain cultures. So in a workplace that is professional, how do you command that respect, or how do you get that respect, or how do you have them understand? Right. And like a lot of these people, they come from smaller towns, smaller villages, where all they know is what they've been taught. And it wasn't in a school setting, and it wasn't anything formal. And so how do we progress, and how do we work? I mean, Janice, you're everywhere in the Lower Mainland, in Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, and you're on God knows how many given sites in the draw of a day, or in the run of a day. And I mean, dealing with like all these personalities, and it's male dominated, and all these different cultures. And it's just, I can't even imagine, because I did not have that experience.
Janice, have you found through the years some suggestions for our listeners about how to gain that respect?
That was a really tough hill to climb. I had to, I'm not going to say get down to their level, because that's not fair. I just had to show them that I cared about them, and that they meant everything to me.
Okay.
And that the reason I was there was because I was there to make sure they went home to their family. So you have to earn respect through not being a bullstring loud voice like I could be. You have to, I hate to even say this, but maybe you can come up with another word. You get to their level. Hey, I work for the same company as you do. You're hired to do this job. I'm hired to do that job. But respect is about listening, understanding, and knowing who you're dealing with. Because if someone comes at me aggressive, I can meet that personality in a heartbeat. But if someone gives me respect, I can give respect back. So I think you just have to hold your ground, but still show professionalism, and don't waver.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, overall, like, not just where you are today, but looking at like all your workplaces and just kind of high level summing it up here, but did you feel like you had support from your upper management? Did you feel like you had buy-in? Were there times where you questioned what they had said? Was it because of the fact of you being a woman? Did that have like an influence on any of that?
I think I had a mix of both. I've had, it's kind of funny. One boss is white and one boss is Punjabi.
Yeah.
Right. So do they get along sometimes? Not really. Right. Because we think differently. So I get a lot of support a lot of times from my white boss. And sometimes my Punjab boss goes to the side of the culture.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to find a way to bring them both up. Will both bosses ever deny me doing my job? No. Will they ever say I haven't ever done my job? They will praise me to the end, right? Because I do my job.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's times where one will call the supervisor and say, don't listen to her, do it this way. What do I do? It's his company.
Yeah.
It's your company, dude. You want to say that? Then you do it. And that's what I've experienced. But you know what? I just go out and do my job.
Yeah. And this reminds me, I get calls sometimes. One of the biggest things is now we're taking culture, and it's culture versus safety, which we could probably have a whole entire another podcast about, but I'm going to make this very brief here. But I get calls a lot of times, and traditionally in the Sikh faith, which is, I come from the Sikhism faith. I practice it very, very loosely. But they have turbans, and it's an article of faith. And so a lot of times I get asked, and you've come across this before too, where it's like hard hat. How does a hard hat get on? And I know you've had to understand that, and we've had the conversation and working around that as well. Do you want to touch up on that or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, PPE, even though it's the last line of defense, it is required on a job site.
Yeah.
And under the fit, use, care, wear, you have to have your head fit in the helmet. I mean, why do we design a bowl in there for it to just sit on top like a teapot, right? It's not how it works. So when they have more than 2 wraps, which most of them have quite, either it's a wide band or whatever.
Yeah.
There was a Sikh leader that did go to the federal government. They did have a conversation about it, and they talked about it in construction. Yeah. And the Sikh, they didn't disregard the turban, which was a good thing for the faith, but they did say it has to be small enough so that the hard hat fits your head. So that means 2 wraps of a cloth, and there are certainly smaller cloths like the patka that they can wear and then put the hard hat on, and it fits properly. But what these guys tend to do is they take the device apart. They don't realize they're breaking the law by breaking a safety device. A hard hat is a safety device. They break it, turn it around so they can put that dial here, and apparently it fits better over the turban. Not allowed. Not allowed. The head has to fit in the turban or in the hard hat, pardon me, if you're wearing a turban. And if they refuse to do that, then they 100% have to have a chin strap on at all times.
I'm going to break in here because we do have a question from LinkedIn. So I wanted to make sure, Anna, that I get your question in there. And she is asking Janice if maybe we could talk about your experience in getting buy-in in a less than positive safety culture.
Sure. I've been dealing with this for 6 years. We have 300 workers and probably 150 to 200 wear turbans. And I visit 3 to 4 sites a day. Basically, we do our orientation, we talk about it. We do our training, we talk about it. We do toolboxes, we talk about it. I go on the job site, I talk about it. If a worker fails to follow, they are immediately taken into my discipline structure, because I'll give them a verbal, then I'll give them a written. And if they fail to follow, then they come into my office, and now they got to tell the owner why they refuse to follow the law. Because I've tried the suspension. I've tried, I won't terminate somebody because of a turban, but I will suspend them because I'm not going to talk and talk and talk till I'm blue in the face and they do nothing about it. So
is that getting buy-in though? Like,
the buy-in is when you make them sit in front of the owner and tell them why you refuse to wear your PPE properly. I as a white woman, I don't have any more voice with them. They just go, yeah, whatever. They'll go, yes, yes. They sit there in the group. Yeah, yeah, okay, okay. And the minute I leave, it's back to the way it was. I've seen this for 6 years and I'm done fighting that fight. So now I give them 3 warnings. And after that, they're coming in and they're going to tell my owner, who is Punjab, why they refuse to follow that.
And but let's look at let's broaden this up and kind of look at safety as a value in a whole though. Sure. Right? Not just one narrow slice. So how can we, if we're walking into a culture where there's a poor like safety is not valued in general, how have you, Janice, helped get those people to buy into the value of safety in your
real life stories?
That's awesome for sharing. Sure. Just to go back just a second though. So when you take them in, I understand, like from a cultural perspective, you're holding them accountable and they need to be responsible for their actions. With the culture aspect and safety, I think it's not so much the value as it is the education, because we do learn from our experiences. And unfortunately, like maybe they just never had those experiences, because when they come over from like South Asia or India specifically, and then they come out here, it's a whole different world out here. And by you sharing your experiences and story sharing is so powerful. It is so powerful. And by you actually investing and telling them, hey, you know what, this happened to somebody else, or this happened to me, it is huge. Absolutely agree with you. Yeah. Definitely.
That's when I got the buy-in, Tamara, was because they couldn't relate to it. I had to, like my owner gave me the hint. He said, show them pictures, tell them
Yeah.
stories,
Yeah.
and that was what made a huge, not only our supervisors, the main thing, when I made them realize that under the WCB law, under the act, how responsible they had to be. And
So-
nobody had ever told them that before.
Yeah.
Right. So one of your tactics was to let them know what
Educate.
their accountability was under the law. Yeah, I use that in retail. It's very powerful. They don't understand that it's actually a legislation. It's not your personal opinion. And when you level that up, it totally changes the playing field for sure. What other tactics can you share with our audience that you might have used?
The most powerful one was the stories.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is taking them along on my journey. For example, I'll take, if I've done an orientation for a new young worker, I'll take, 3 or 4 of them that I know just started, and I'll walk them through a job site. And I'll say, while we're walking, I want you to observe as many hazards as possible and count them. And then we'll have a quick little meeting at the end, and then we're going to walk back and I'm going to point them out. Because that's a part of buying in too, is showing them, right? It's not about talking stories. You got to show them why this is unsafe. Because like Amandeep said, education is key. Training is key. If we don't educate and train these little kids from these villages, you're right, they're going to make a ton of mistakes and get hurt. But yeah, I love taking these young kids, and I'll find one that has English understanding, and I'll say, you can explain in Punjabi while I explain this. And we have such a great time together.
Mm-hmm.
And what that's doing is we're partnering. They're seeing I'm not such a bad guy. They actually see that a white woman's not a bad person. I'm not their boss. I'm working with them, not against them. That was their biggest fear, is I was working against them. And so they weren't buying in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I showed them that I was here for them, to support them, that I was here to keep them safe and make sure they go home to their family, and what can I do to help you understand, then all of a sudden it changed.
And did you find that when you started that process of walking with them to talk about what kind of identifiable risks were in the site, did that start to change where they would bring you and say, hey, Janice, I'm seeing these sites? So the value was that you respected them. And so
That's right.
they came back to you and then trusted you to help them. What about that play? Taking it
So
to that
now they
place?
call me, and when they see near misses, they would never call me. They would never, but I've given every worker my card, and I'll say, if you want me to keep you safe and you aren't getting support from your coworkers or your supervisor, I'm your next phone call. I want them to know they can trust me. I want them to know that I'm there for them. You have to. They don't know. Honestly, they come from a village. They don't know. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting because like I've worked with, so in British Columbia, Canada, I believe specifically in the lower mainland, 70 to 80% of residential construction is predominantly Punjabi speaking. And so because I come from that background, I have an in. And so dealing with like a lot of contractors, a lot of developers, a lot of times they want to do the right thing. They want to make sure that their workers are safe. They're following the law, the rule of the land, but they just simply do not know what it is. They don't have that education. They're not sure what to say when they call the regulator. If anything, they're afraid of WCB because they're just not sure, and they just simply do not understand, and they don't know. And so what Janice has done at her organization, it is so monumental. It's so pivotal. And for you to break through that culture, and especially being a woman, because I can tell you, growing up, it's, inside my house, it was great. And sometimes, there were biases where my brothers were allowed to go out and I wasn't. And it is what it is. It's a part of the culture. It's a part of those upbringings as well. But now when you take those values, beliefs, opinions, those core fundamentals, those building blocks, and now you apply them and shift them over to work, and it is very different. It is. It's a whole different situation. It's a whole different scenario. A lot of the owners, they want to do the right thing. They just don't know how to guide and direct their workers. And Janice, what you do, you're so brilliant at this, is exactly that. You take these new and young workers and then you educate them. And education is key.
Simple.
It comes with the experience and it's coupled, and it definitely, but how are we going to progress? Right? We need to educate through story sharing and through different materials, and train them and make sure that they're armed with all the knowledge that we possibly can, so that when they're in the work site, we're making sure that they're safe. They're making sure that they're safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think also Malcolm has a question. Malcolm, unmic and come on in.
It's really a great dialogue going here. Janice, I really enjoy what you're saying, because, early in my early exposures was a tough grandma running a ranch, and and then another tough lady with the 4-6s ranch, being the only lady with all them cowboys, and then working feed and grain. We had one woman and 70 men. And I saw the things that she went to, but what you described is hold to your standard, set the rules, hold people accountable, and build trust is the key thing for male and female. And I think I took some of that to me when I first entered the Navy, because I was in the hospital corps, and so I had to work on a medical ward with all female nurses, and I was the only dude.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's a reverse.
Reverse. And so what I had to do was understand the culture, the organization, and the rules, and apply myself to that. And if I had a question or concerns, I had to find a trusted nurse I could go to and get that information. And it wasn't easy, because you have the male ego and you have female ego, and you have to work through that yourself. And it's a good perspective, because I'm an employer. I employ men and women, and what we do is, the rule of reciprocity. You get what you give back. And growing up in the Navy, women used to have administrative roles, and they took on more active roles, in combatant positions, nuclear, engineering, and stuff like that. So I've seen women in the last 30 years, come to the forefront of the industry and really do an exceptional job. And I think as an employer, it's good for me to hear the Oz perspective outside of my organization, so I can have the right mindset when I speak to my staff. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
That is so awesome. Malcolm, I have a question for you. So when you were in that role where you were surrounded by females, were you elevated? Were you empowered? Were there any negative experiences, whether it be with your peer group, your coworkers, or upper management, where you felt discriminated as being the only male?
Working in nursing, earlier, when you're a male, you're automatically tasked with all the lifting and grunt work.
Yeah.
And picking up patients, lifting, turning, and stuff like that. And so there was some of that, but for the most part, everybody was respectful of each other. And you had some that through education bias and stuff, where they were at this level, you get some of that. But as long as you did your job and you continue to try to learn and apply those principles, you normally got their respect.
Yeah.
And then, as I moved up, where women came into engineering and stuff like that, they would come in with a barrier, a wall that, we had to overcome, because automatically everybody had these ideals, that she can't do this because she's fatigued, or, she's never done it before, but they always turned it around, especially like in our firefighting, shipboard firefighting. The girls really did an exceptional job and proved themselves in the community.
Yeah.
And now I don't see that it ever gets questioned, what their capabilities are, especially in law enforcement, firefighting, and equipment operators. And then when I was in oil in Russia, oil and gas with Exxon, we'd have women at the camp, in administrative or safety roles, dealing with, 1,000 knuckleheads, 1,000 to 2 of them, So I understand, the employees hitting on each other and stuff like that. And, us as managers have to set a standard too. We don't use off-color jokes. We don't put up posters. When we do PowerPoints, they're all professional, and we don't separate anybody. We talk to the job and the standard, and that helps both parties.
Yes.
Hope I asked your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because I've never really gotten the perspective of a male being in a female dominated workforce or organization. One other question: when you were getting promoted up the ranks, did your gender play a role in that, or did it have anything to do with you being promoted?
Well, our promotion system, is based on evaluation. You get an evaluation from your superiors, plus you have to get signed off on certain criteria, and then you go in front of a board. So there are different points. There may be some, if there was a bias towards male, it wasn't enough to be fine at, for advancement, And if there was an offset in the balance, the Bureau of Navy would give a credit towards the females, so they get a 1 point to balance that diversity.
Yeah.
And I don't really see that too much in the commercial area. The gals really have to press hard, to get up there. And but I know quite a few women that own construction companies, and they run proposals, they run a lot of jobs, and they hold a lot of respect, in the community and with their workers. I think, as Janice said, men and women are needed in the industry to balance it and bring different perspective, and it helps the company a lot. But I had kind of a disadvantage before I went into nursing. Like I said, I had grandma was a strong rancher running things. I had a mother and 3 sisters too, so.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've always been surrounded by women, some pretty strong ones at that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That is so great. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate y'all for inviting me. This is a good perspective. Like I said, on my side, it's nice to hear the thoughts and what's going on. So when I approach my employees, I can go in there with the right mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Janice, coming back to you, the future of women in safety and women in construction, where do you see it going? Where do you see us? And
I came, I saw, I conquered.
I love that. I love that.
Great risks are worthwhile. You got to look at the old issues, and then you got to find a new way. We cannot keep repeating the past, right?
No, absolutely not.
So, and that you can say that all day long. I came, I saw, I conquered, because as we change, we conquered that. Now next, I think we just have to keep moving forward. Like everything is moving forward at such a fast pace in technology. I don't think safety is going to move that fast. But what I would like to see is that Malcolm appreciates it, that we all find a balance in this industry, right? that men don't feel like they need to have big booming voices over us and put us down. I just feel like we need to just all be respected. I can't say even by degree, because there can be a lot of us who are a lot smarter just by being in the field. So I
Yeah,
think just keep
absolutely.
going.
Women coming into health and safety or into construction, like what words of advice do you have for them?
Make your tomorrows rewarding. You cannot live in the past and dwell in the past. Right.
Yeah.
One of the things maybe Malcolm can relate to with me, we're of that age where you've learned through your life at, 30s, 40s, and, Tamara's in her, you learn, right? So you learn from your past and you have to stop making those mistakes. You have to reinvent. You got to find new ways. You're always proactive. You cannot be reactive, right? Because I'm proactive and because I'm looking for the next new way, I think we're going to keep moving forward. Everything has to continue to move forward. We're going to become more digital. I just don't see falling back to our old ways. We can't.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
If the changes are compelling and we can train, we can teach, education is so key in the field, not in school. I've got girls who've never stepped onto a job site, haven't got a clue what to do, and they're safety coordinators.
Wow.
No training.
And education goes both ways. I think that's one thing, after my 45 and getting into my 50s, I realized that so little. And by taking on and listening other people's experiences, you gain so much that you can leverage their experience and not even have to suffer the consequences that they already suffered. So that's like priceless. It's like, yes, let me know what to look out for. What are those red flags, and I'm scribbling in my book when people are talking, so I have it up here so I can forecast. Now, I know that we're getting to the end of our session. We could just keep on going here, but I wanted to give you the chance, Janice, to leave our audience with some closing thoughts. What would you like to say?
We have to look at everything is constant. Everything is moving, right? And we all tend to not want to get out of our comfort zone. But it's when you break your comfort zone is when you break barriers. And you might be sweating and your palms aren't able to grip anything and you're stuttering, but you got to find your voice and just keep moving forward. Forget the past. The past does not serve you. When you waste so much time gossiping about the past or focusing on the past, you're wasting so much time of what could be in your future, right? It's kind of like when you go on a blind date with a guy. He wants to talk about your past. I don't, because that was my past. Let's talk about our future and what we are going to do in our future. So think about your future, move forward step by step. It doesn't have to be big moves. You just have to quit living in the past, move forward.
I like that. Definitely.
Love that. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Agree with that too. Yeah. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Does the audience have any other closing or any, final thoughts, comments, questions, anything?
Amandeep, a lot of people tend to fall under peer pressure.
Mhm.
And I think that peer pressure can almost be a killer of joy or killer of if you want to move forward, but you go to your peers, oh, is this a right move? Is this a wrong move? I know our peers can be helpful, but peer pressure can also be destroying. And I don't want to be measured by any one thing. I want to be recognized. So the only way you're going to get recognized is to be different. If you act the same way and you follow the same, I can look at California girls and they all look the same, right? But I'm going to go down there and be the redhead with the big eyes, or something. I'm going to be different. I want to stand out. I want you to remember me. So it's not about the peer pressure. It's not about falling back and holding on to old habits. Tony Robbins was a great mentor. He did a 2-day conference in Calgary, Unleash the Power Within. And on your third day, you walked on 50 feet of fire, burning hot coals. It was terrifying. I didn't feel one thing because your mind is so powerful. Don't fall to the peer pressure. Don't fall to the habits. Don't fall to the past. Use your mind. I could tell you stories about people. I've been in that business where people can bend spoons with their mind. Your mind is so powerful. We can destroy ourselves or we can make ourselves the best version of who we are. It's our choice. No one gives us our happiness. We might have people to help us in our decisions, but your choices have to be who you are. You have to stand strong for who you are. Forget the peer pressure.
Absolutely.
Doesn't serve you.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, I know that, living by your values and your principles and having those, as my friend Kathy likes to say, what is your North Star, can be very empowering to getting you to your next level.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. That's
No.
awesome. That is so powerful. Thank you so much, Janice. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for coming on. I totally appreciate you being so vulnerable and opening up and just sharing your experiences with all of us here today, the audience, with Tamara and myself as well.
Yeah. No, this
Yeah.
has been great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Amandeep, for being with us doing this co-hosting from Salis. So we appreciate that you're joining to do this. So thank you, everybody, for joining us and being here to listen. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And we're
Thanks,
looking
Malcolm.
forward to next week, guys. Make sure everyone's coming out. The panel, we're going to bring back Janice, Candice, as well as Stacy, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be really good.
I think so. Yes. And
Yeah.
put in your email in the chat if you want me to add you to the calendar invite to come for that session. And then I'll know to put people in for that session.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Where is that thing here?